Hallo zusammen. Welcome to another edition of Feedback Sonntag. We are in Woche 10 already. We're almost there. And because we're almost there, it's starting to make a bit more sense now to spend some of these moments to go over things that maybe have been coming up repeatedly throughout the course, so not just over the past week, and especially things that might feed directly into the way that you study for the final exam, which is coming up as well. Um, Before we jump into that, because when you hear final exam, you think, oh, okay, well, any more information about that? Not yet, but the last week of the term isn't dedicated to yet another chapter and another Tagcontroller and Polizeikontrolle and Anreise and whatnot. The last week of the term we dedicate to studying for the final exam. So there will be a module that includes some practice questions uh, that are formulated pretty much like what you'll see on the exam. So rest assured, when we come a little bit closer to the final exam, we'll spend ample time going through, excuse me, what exactly to expect there, and you'll be well prepared in terms of themes to be covered and ideas to be aware of, and the kinds of questions, the amount of time, all that kind of stuff. But nonetheless, it's probably a good idea to get our mindset in the right place for preparing for this exam adequately. And to do so, one of the main things that tends to come up again and again and again are basically just grammar terms, right? We say, for example, in a question, well, fill in the blank with the definite article, or with the indefinite article, or give me the modal verb, or give me the past participle of something. Oftentimes I think that we hope you know those terms, but at the same time too, it may be the case that sometimes those terms are utilized in this course without really giving it proper attention and background knowledge so that you are well aware of what we ask for. And again, in many cases, questions that you'll find on an exam or that you've encountered thus far, we use some of those grammar terms almost as clues, right? We say, okay, well, fill in the blank with that definite article. It's meant to give you that clue so you know already to start narrowing it down to, well, it's got to be der, die, das. If, however, you find that, okay, we asked you for the definite article, and that only serves to confuse you more because you're not sure what the definite article actually refers to in the first place, that's an issue. So I wanted to just spend this feedback zone tag going over some primary grammar terms that you have encountered thus far, just to reinforce them so that come the final exam, you're not getting stuck on grammar terms being the issue. Instead, you can focus on actually do you know your German. Okay? So I'm just going to go through some basics and spend time on the ones that I think need to be spent more time on, but otherwise we'll just go through them. And we'll start with something basic like a noun, auf Deutsch ein Nomen. Again, nouns are simply names of people, places, things, etc. Pretty basic. But then we often, of course, ask you for the pronoun, auf Deutsch Pronomen. And the pronoun then refers to a noun that has already been referenced before, right? And again, pronouns are things like ich, du, er, sie, es, wir, ihr, sie. Those are our pronouns that we use. So, it takes the place of a noun and is utilized by having one of those very basic pronouns that we see in all the conjugation tables, right? So when we ask you for a pronoun, we are indeed looking for ich, du, er, sie, es, wir, ihr, sie. That's the kind of pronoun that we want to see. So it's just a matter then, in many cases, finding the correct pronoun. And if there is a blank looking for a pronoun, you look to the verb, how's the verb conjugated, and then fill in the appropriate pronoun based upon the conjugation of the verb. Okay? Now, as I already said before, when we ask you for an article, oftentimes we'll ask you for either a definite article, ein bestimmter Artikel, oder an indefinite article, unbestimmter Artikel. So the definite article refer to specific nouns. That's when we would say, for example, der Tisch. We're saying, the table that we can both see, the table that we both are aware of, the table. Oder das Sofa, that couch, right? The couch over there. We use those bestimmte Artikel, the definite articles, when there is that kind of sense of shared awareness of an item. Now, we also use definite articles, however, in many cases because the definite articles show us, the instructors, that you know the gender of your nouns, right? Because there are three primary definite articles, der, die, und das. So we know that if a noun is masculine, neuter, or feminine because the definite article changes accordingly. That differs then from those indefinite articles, the unbestimmte Artikel, because there's only two, right? Primarily. Ein and eine. Even the accusative, it's einen. Well, the accusative changes, right? Because you can determine whether or not it would be einen versus ein for the neuter and for the feminine eine. But in many cases, when we just ask you for a noun and article, if you give us the indefinite article, then we can't necessarily tell if you know the difference between masculine and neuter, right? In this case, ein Tisch und ein Sofa, again, one is masculine, one is neuter, but with the indefinite article, they're both just ein. So it's much more difficult for us to determine if you know what it is. But we use indefinite articles when there is no shared sense of awareness of an item. If we're talking about ein Tisch, it doesn't really matter what table it is. We're just talking about a table versus der Tisch, and there we assume, well, it's the table. It's one we're both aware of. So again, in many cases, if you're asked to put in an article, we're looking for a bestimmte Artikel, a definite article, using der, die, das. Now, another term we use quite often are prepositions, oder auf Deutsch, Präpositionen. Now, the prepositions demonstrate relationship between nouns usually, right? And these are prepositions like für, gegen, bis, nach, mit. In many cases, we need to know what the preposition is and then how the article that comes afterwards changes based upon the tense in the case, right? So in some cases, some articles like für, gegen, those articles or those prepositions need to use then the accusative case afterwards. Now there are some, such as mit oder nach, that use the dative case afterwards. We haven't encountered the dative yet, so we wouldn't expect you to know how to do the dative, but it's more a matter of, all right, if you see a preposition, like, again, für, gegen, what follows then needs to be in the accusative case. So when we ask for that preposition, we're asking for something that shows the linkage between two items, and you would fill it in with one of those common prepositions that we've encountered throughout the course. Switching then into the notion of verbs. Again, verbs in their essence are words that describe the action of a sentence. We always need that noun. We need some kind of subject. We always need a verb in a sentence, some kind of action. Those are our two primary components in a sentence. But then, of course, there's not just verbs, there are different kinds of verbs, right? One of the major ones that we encounter quite often are modal verbs, and these are verbs that express, a form of like a necessity or a possibility. These are verbs like möchten, would like something, dürfen, to be able to do something, mögen, to like something, können, to be able to can, right? And wollen, to want something, right? So when we use our modal verbs then, again, the major thing is that we want to see, all right, are you conjugating the modal verb according to the subject, to the noun, to the pronoun, whatever it might be? Are you conjugating it correctly? And then where are you putting the other verb, right? Because a modal verb needs to have a verb in the infinitive that goes with it. A modal verb on itself very often does not make sense. You can argue in some cases that if you say, for example, ich möchte das Eis, I would like ice cream, right? You don't really need to often have another verb with it because you kind of can make sense of it contextually. But again, for German 101, we want to see what that other verb is. And we want to see that that other verb is at the end of the sentence. So there again, if we ask you for a modal verb, Modalverb, we want to see one of those core Modalverben that we've encountered before in the course, okay? And the final one then is one that we've just been encountering recently, is the notion of a past participle. Auf Deutsch Partizip 2. There's another past participle, Partizip 1, that we're not talking about or covering, so right now it's just Partizip 2. We'll refer to it as the past participle. And that again is the form of the verb that expresses an action in the past, right? Often beginning in German with that ge, ge. So these are verbs like gegessen, geschrieben, gegeben, gemacht, gefahren, those kind of verbs. And again, with the past participle then, what do we need? Well, first we need to have some form of auxiliary verb, like haben oder sein. It's going to be one of those two. And again, what makes it haben oder sein? As I spoke about, I believe, last week, haben is used for verbs that are kind of called stationary. There is no movement implied with them, whereas we use sein then when a verb does imply some sort of movement, okay? But again, when we're looking for the past participle, because we want to put something in the past tense, we need to, again, first conjugate, have an O-design in accordance to the subject, to the noun, and then put that past participle at the very end of the sentence, just like with modal verbs. So both modal verbs and past participles, when we're asking for one of those two, we're looking for, all right, do you know where the first verb goes? And do you know where the last verb goes as well, or the second verb goes? And that goes to the end of the sentence, okay? So I think fundamentally those are the main grammar terms that we've certainly spoken about thus far in the course. That will certainly come up again on the final exam in some capacity, but ones that it probably just makes sense to go over them, make sure we're all aware of them, we're clear, and that you're ready to go and not get bogged down by terminology and instead focus on your German. Okay? That's it for today. All the best with the online of this week, and we'll talk to you soon. Tschüss.